Today on the podcast, we have Rosalie Lee. She's one of my personal friends and she does a lot of stuff in the community. Right now, she's on a little bit of a hiatus from her previous work life, and she decided to explore a little bit more of the software engineering and a lot of the tech stuff. Originally, she was a pediatric behavioral interventionist, but now she is exploring a whole lot more things. In this podcast, we talked about really navigating the healthcare field and a lot of the disparities that we see Black people having, particularly in Portland, but on a broader sense, of what it's like to immigrate to the US and really sort of navigate that space as a Black person, but also as a immigrant. And so, without further ado, let's get this episode started. We have Rosalie on the podcast, essentially, and she might have already had corona, like we got a corona survivor, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I think the last time that I spoke to you, you were kind of going on this. You were taking a break from work and you were going on this sort of sabbatical, this well-deserved vacation. And it's how long has it been since you kind of went on this?
I started in September, and I think it's been, we kind of planned. I think I understood that I needed a break. I want to say it was April, and I was just really getting burnt out from the work. So preemptively it was the saving money, and then September is when it officially started.
Okay. And then you kind of had a couple of, did you start traveling or did you just kind of go cold turkey from the world for a little bit, or?
I definitely went cold turkey from the world. And I think there was just a lot of decompressing that was very much needed from the work that I was doing. Traveling a little bit, I think, also, this just the notion of free time. I don't know what is that.
Yeah.
What is free time? And learning how to just slow down. I don't know that. I think that's still a work in progress, because I think a lot of people that are go-getters, it's just we don't know. And then also, I think just having a history of just growing up impoverished, that alone is just you don't feel like you can stop. You don't feel that you have the privilege to stop.
Yeah.
So it's been painful, because it's just I don't know what to do with a lot of time. I think naturally I'm just okay, well, if I'm not going to do anything, I want to travel. And I think that's just another way of filling my time with something. Instead of just staying still.
Yeah.
So
that's the, I kind of had an ounce of that sort of experience when I was part of a NCAA lawsuit, and I ended up getting $6,000 from that lawsuit. And and so I found myself once I leading up to that, I've always had anxiety around just money, paying bills. The gym that I was working at, that shut down. So I was essentially out of work. I had some contracts and stuff. And I was back in the situation of being a freelancer that I did not want to be. It sucked. And so when I got that check, right when I cashed it, I just felt there was a huge weight just lifted off of my soul, where I didn't have to worry about when my next paycheck was going to be, and I didn't have to worry about whether I was going to have to ask my parents for money or if I was going to be able to pay for my rent. And so it was just Dang, this is just, it was like kind of surreal, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But like I'm sure you're familiar with like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yeah.
and it's just like food, shelter, and I to the very top is just like self actualization. And it's just like a lot of people don't have the opportunity to self actualize because it's just like we're so worried about like having food, you know what I mean, just our basic needs met. And so I think it's just like once you are able to like pay for your basic needs and you're able to attend to all these like, I mean, self care. I don't think I've seen that a lot with a lot of the patients that I was serving. Is a lot of them are just so, and you have to be. It's just like they're worried about where they're going to sleep and how they're going to feed themselves, clothe themselves, and it's just like any type of like self-actualization is really difficult. I think there's, you know what I mean, windows of it, but when you're so preoccupied and it's just like that's where your mind is at.
Yeah. And so you mentioned patience. And so like prior to your
Yeah.
going on your sabbatical, like what were you actually doing?
Um, so it was with niche, it was novel interventions for children's health. I was a behavior interventionist, and it's primarily with serving kids with chronic illness and disease. And these are probably the most vulnerable kids in terms of just like really high psychosocial risk factors. I think one of the requirements for a lot of the kids in the program is that in addition to having those chronic illness and just being high risk, they're usually the highest utilizers of the Medicaid and Medicare system. And so in addition to that, like, for instance, I'll give you an example, is instead of having primary care, they're utilizing the emergency room for their primary care.
Okay.
And going usually when it's serious. But in addition to that, I would say, just like a lot of them have like really challenging aspects of their life, whether it be like parents that have immigrated here and don't speak the language, and like there's a lot of barriers to healthcare in terms of, I mean, even just simple translation. Or I did have a patient that I was working with where mom was fighting addiction. She had the chronic illness herself, and then the child was deaf and had type 1. And she was also had a lot of trauma. So more often than not, it was just like doctors and social workers weren't able to reach these families. And so I was on call for 24/7 doing like behavioral intervention and trying to scale the families up in terms of just like meeting their basic needs in addition to like managing a complex chronic illness.
Okay. And so
So
you
that's
were
a lot.
yeah. So you were on call, so that meant that like you could get a call at 3 in the afternoon, or you
Oh
could
yeah,
get a call at 1:30 in the morning.
absolutely. Yeah, no sleep.
Yeah.
Team no sleep. That's a real thing. And like, I mean, one of the things about the position was you get really connected with the family, being that we weren't confined to the walls of the hospital. We were often in the community, in their homes, and so there's a certain level of intimacy that comes with that. And I think a lot, oftentimes, it's just like parents don't want to be perceived as bad parents. They're doing the best that they can, and so more often than not, they weren't opening to social workers and doctors because that could, you know what I mean, potentially that's a threat.
Yeah.
Depending on how you're being perceived, and this is like the likelihood of being call being made to Child Protective Services. So
Yeah, and that
it's just like,
just adds extra stress to it because
yeah, these parents are doing the best. I really believe doing the best that they can with what they have and the knowledge and education that they have and resources that they have. But it's just like, I don't think the system fails a lot of folks. And then I think behaviorally speaking is just like, if they weren't taught certain things, you know what I mean? Just, they're not going to be doing those things for themselves. So I think just like, regardless of age, if you're not taught a certain skill or ways to be resourceful, like that's not what you're going to do.
Yeah, and especially in this day and age now where, there's quarantines and people are scared, people don't have access to certain things they would normally get from the store because, you know, Sally from the
Mm-hmm.
suburbs is buying all the toilet paper and all the hand sanitizer. And so, it just,
Yeah.
furthers those disparities.
Yeah. And then like, if you can imagine folks worried that might not have access to, you know what I mean, a car or a store that's like readily available or within, you know what I mean, walking distance. So it presents us like a whole nother, I can only imagine like amount of challenges in terms of just like meeting your basic needs.
Yeah. Yeah. It really becomes this very polarizing thing of like the haves and the have nots. And there's just a stark disparity between those that have access to just the basic stuff and those that don't.
Yeah. Yeah. You get it. I know you get it.
Yeah. you know, um, but like, so how'd you kind of get into this line of work? Because I remember like when we first met, you were like, what, like at Portland State or just finishing up at Portland State. And I remember I would
Yeah.
often see like your face on like the bus as like one of the little
Oh,
promos for Portland State. And so like,
man. Yeah, no, I think that's a hustle. It's just like you can't never do one thing, and so it's just like making sure that you have different streams of income coming in. So there was the point where I was modeling, I was a student, um, I was volunteering, and I was in science, and then I think simultaneously that's when I started Spare Change. I was like just doing a lot
yeah,
and working as a student researcher at OHSU. So I was just like all over the place. I think I thought I wanted to go to medical school or get my PhD in neuroscience. So that was a lot of my focus. But then I was taking, in addition to taking neuroscience classes at PSU, I was also taking like a behavior analysis course. And I think that's where the combination of the behavior analysis and the neuroscience came in. And fortunately, like, it's really odd that I was fortunate enough to come up on an opportunity that was posted in the PSU like psych student emails and fell upon the position at OHSU, which was just like everything that I wanted to do. And I would go as far as to say a lot of my lived experience was really helpful in this position, just considering the fact that my mom, I immigrated here with my mom when I was younger, and just helping her navigate the world. Of course, I think again, and not to say that these things are tied to each other, but grew up impoverished and like watching my mom in terms of a lot of opportunities, like people treat her a particular way because they didn't perceive her to speak English well, or so I think just watching, and then also just like understanding the resources that are available, and watching like just folks in my community navigate that would babysit us, and you understand the circumstances that they're under. And so I think that's really helped me in this position, or having that lived experience. So something that I'm definitely passionate about and went to school for is just, I think that's definitely a blessing to be able to come out of college and your first job be what you know what I mean, what you intended to go for. So
Yeah, it's one of those where, and I'm like starting to slowly sort of accept the the fact that like the experiences that I had growing up can be like
Mhm.
teachable moments and enlightening for other people, to where I'm
Yeah.
able to find those life lessons and then package that into a way that that makes me sort of, I wouldn't say an expert, but it allows me to
You're an
use,
expert. Lived experience is
you
like
know,
the expertise that I don't think a lot of people account for. Just
yeah,
it's not everybody's experience. As long as you're not like this is how everybody is. But I think there's definitely an you know what I mean you're an expert in certain ways, and not to downplay that at all.
yeah. Like it's really sort of like that plight that like most black people have, mainly people of color have, that that there's value in a lot of the things that like we've gone through, and really seeing that value
Hmm.
that either other people see or don't see, and really
Yeah,
taking pride in that.
yeah. Ooh, and it's taken me a long time to take pride in that because that's I think it's something I've always struggled with as far as trying to hide, especially like I definitely felt it while I was going to school, and then I mean like just of going and applying for jobs and presenting a particular way, and like uh, when I started Spirit Change, I was like going around to different foundations, it's just like present a particular way. I don't know that that was I I think there was times where it helped me, but it's just like kind of like acclimating and what's the word? Assimilating
Nice.
to try to not look apart so that people will um I don't know,
Yeah, I think it's
discriminate
assimilate.
against you.
Yeah, I think kind of like fitting in, but or like not sticking out. Yeah, kind of like not sticking out more than you want, more than you feel comfortable with, I guess. So.
Yeah, and or just like I think people I mean once they perceive you a certain way, it's just like that you're less educated or you know what I mean, like that you're poor or that you need a handout. And I think it's just like I wanted to come in and I wanted to be respected and I wanted to be heard. And the ways that I went about it were similar in a lot of ways, even though like I would act a particular way, you know what I mean, when I was out presenting, you know what I mean, the the organization or if I'm, you know what I mean, going out to a job. But I think it goes back to they call it code switching, and it's just like you're doing it for survival. And
Yeah, like code switching and imposter syndrome. That's those have been
yeah,
sort of like, I feel like those
oof.
have been like buzzwords for me, because
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
you try not to like come off as like, I wouldn't say offensive, but like you like some demeanors that like black people have can come off as offensive to the dominant culture, and
mhm,
so you try to like be conscious of that so that like you don't make other people uncomfortable, but you
yeah,
also don't want to like sell yourself short, and playing that sort of playing with that dynamic often puts you in a hard position, because like you can only do so much without like losing yourself.
yeah. Oh my gosh! And I don't think anybody talks about the grief of like within that is this. I think as I have attained more education, and then also kind of get lost in code switching where you're working professionally and you spend the majority of your day like at work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So after a while you're losing I don't want to say it's just like there was a way that I talked and behaved, and I felt like that there was a loss, and like I could see as I was uh growing and progressing in my educational career or academic career, um, and just like my personal life, that I felt more and more separated from friends that I had grown up with. And people make comments. They're just like, when do you start talking like this? Or when you start acting like this? And it's just like, I'm out here trying to live just like you. And, you know what I mean? What I have to do, like, what I feel like I have to do, in order to meet my goals and like progress professionally.
Yeah, it's you know, eventually there will be like a rule book or a guidebook to just like help navigate this, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody's just going to just make it off of just because they really need it and they think somebody else is it's going to help somebody else, but it's
Yeah.
it's one of those things that like they just don't teach you in schools that you're going to have to deal with this, and dealing with like things like this can affect you both, physically, emotionally, socially, uh,
Yeah.
and often it can be detrimental for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's like, as far as the grief around that, that's something that people don't talk about. I think there's grief in a lot of stuff for sure. As far as just like something even as small as just like, you know what I mean? Like losing weight. And while I think there's a lot of great things about that, it's just like when you lose a whole bunch of weight, you got to replace all of your clothes.
Yeah, there's a
You know what I mean? Or vice versa. You gain a whole bunch of weight, you got to replace all your clothes, and it's just like there's grief in that. I remember going into the dressing room one day and thinking I wore a size and got into these pants, and I was like, oh, this is not my size.
oh
But it
yeah.
was kind of like this denial and like stages of grief. But I think there's a lot. I mean, it could pertain to a lot of stuff, but I feel like it. Yeah, I think there's not enough discussion definitely around like folks that are excelling academically and professionally that come from certain socioeconomic statuses, and what that grief is like, and what you're losing sometimes.
Yeah, and so you said that you and your mother immigrated here. So you're not originally like you're not originally like born in Portland, but you've been pretty much like
No,
lived in Portland for your whole life.
I wouldn't say my whole life. So I was born in the Philippines, and then we hop skipped, I think, to Japan, Korea, and then made our way here. And since I've been in the U.S., we lived in California, Texas, Iowa, Washington, and Oregon. And my family is now in California, Southern California. But I stayed here for one, because at a time I was engaged, and was in a long-term relationship. Uh, and I stayed for my partner. But just, yeah, when I left that relationship and seen a lot of benefits to Portland, economically, and just like, I think there's a lot of things that I appreciate about Portland. A lot of people don't speak well of or highly of Portland. And I understand both sides, but I think there's a lot of benefits to living here for sure.
Yeah, like I could, that was one of the things that really shocked me because I like when I finished at Oregon State, I went down to LA, then I went back and moved in with my dad in the Bay Area, and I kind of sat down and talked to him, and I was like, everything that like I like about the Bay Area in terms of like the industry and like the accessibility and sort of the the social life uh that
Yeah,
I would get in the Bay Area, I could get at Portland, and I could live in downtown for, cheaper than it is for me to stay at home. And so,
that part.
I was like, like this is coming from the Bay Area. This is, I'm living in downtown for pennies, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and then like when I moved up here, because I moved up here I literally moved up here because I was trying to get into OHSU. I didn't know about
Hmm.
like anything else that was going on in Portland. And so when I found out that like they're like the comic book capital of the world and like Leica's here and Dark Horse, for me, like Portland's like my LA. And so like it's kind of crazy to see how like what I was doing in LA and what I was doing in the Bay Area, I was able to get like 10 times more done in that same amount of time in Portland.
Yeah, and I think it's people talk so much crap to me about just why are you still in Portland? Why are you like not elsewhere? And I think one of the things, I don't know that I always like knew explicitly why I stayed here, but um just like I thrive off of green spaces, and that's something that's been like, I feel like, life-giving for me. In addition to, I'm not gonna lie, there's the food here is fire
Yeah.
for the price. And like
Yes.
you go to LA or you go to, you know what I mean, New York, they're gonna give you like little, you know what I mean, a little plate, and you're paying $30, whereas like here you're getting like a full meal and maybe some leftovers, and you're still under $20. So to me,
Yeah.
that's a win. And you have farm to table, so the food is fresh. Like it's just like a different quality of like the food is just, and then yeah, it attracts all these chefs. I think in addition to that, I've been able to live on my own, which is worth its weight in gold to me, and then also save money. And then I think I've always known, or not always known, but when the recession hit in like 2008, my access to health insurance and food stamps and just a lot of resources were available here that are not available to folks in other states or other cities. And so it's just like I have the safety net in some ways of those resources that wouldn't be available elsewhere unless I had like 10 kids or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so I think a lot of people forget in terms of like building wealth for themselves, and also progression is just like the importance of that, having that safety net. And then also if you're being strategic, you can use those resources to your benefit. And so a lot of, even I think I want to say that they allowed students to get at PSU. Students were able to get food stamps,
Oh, really?
and you were also able to get state health insurance. And so that was like
Oh,
you could
dang.
opt out. Yeah.
I, I
So
wish I would have known this when I, you know, like I kid you
I
not,
know.
I like,
Yeah.
I just got like dental. I just went to the dentist like probably a couple weeks ago, and I haven't been able to go to the dentist for like the past 3 years, like 3 or 4
Wow.
years. And so
Hmm.
literally like over that past 3 or 4 years, like I'm like hyper conscious of the fact that like I could slip up and have another root canal or something if I walk through that door.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's just, like that just kind of added to my anxiety of like, if I get sick, I'm screwed. If my teeth fall out, I'm
Hmm.
screwed. Like
I hear. I know. I know. And like I think it wasn't until I got OHP, and yeah, there's like full, you get dental. And mind you, it's not like you get dental like you can go in there and get cosmetic. It's just like
yeah.
essential,
you know.
less like having access to those essential things. Like I was getting my teeth regularly cleaned, and like I think there was a lot of, yeah, it's just like use it while you have it. I don't know that I'm going to have this after I'm done with school. I could only hope. Uh, but yeah, I think making use of your insurance and in terms of preventative care. I think it was helpful that I was also doing preventative care research at the time, so I understood the importance of it.
Yeah.
Um, So there's this. It's Portland's been wonderful to me. I think there are definitely it has its shortcomings, and
Yes, I mean
yeah,
the race relations
yeah,
and all those things. A lot of the sort of equity and diversity stuff are kind of just buzzwords right now. But there
hmm
is space
ooh,
in.
buzzwords that people love.
Oh my gosh, you know.
Yeah,
But there's people like you, like doing things that are making it better for people like us to, sort of enjoy and build from, and so I think
yeah,
that there's always a space for that. Um, you know, I always get a kick out of like there's always another like, alt right freaking Antifa rally in downtown. It's
yeah,
just a whole bunch of just like white people fighting each other just in the name of diversity.
yeah. But I mean, like, they're everywhere. It's just like we're in America. Like, I understand there's, what I mean, there's strength in numbers, but it's just, I don't know if this is even worth talking about. But yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I understand it is harder because I think it's important to, I think I've been able to stay in Portland because I've had this great community, you and, what I mean, amongst a whole bunch of other people that I think we've tried to support each other and meet with each other frequently, or at least at the very least, like reach out to each other.
Yeah.
And that is just like, I know not all the folks that come here or relocate here.
Hey, kind of broke up a little bit. Can you hear me? Hello? Looks like the signal dropped.
Are you still there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We try to bring folks in the best that we can, but if you don't have that community and you're not connected, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody has Rod and his penthouse.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not everybody has Rod, and so it's it's and it's I think it speaks to sort of like the culture of like what Portland is.
hmm
Portland's like the Goonies. Like Portland's people still have basement parties and stuff out here. So it's once you get
yeah,
connected, once you like meet somebody, then you kind of meet everybody. But it's just a matter of like
hmm
finding that person to meet so that you find out where everything else is.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I think we me and Rod, I met Rod at an Oregon State game, because his son was
Oh,
at
word.
Oregon State. Yeah, I met Rod at Oregon State because his son was at Oregon State, and I played at
hmm
Oregon State, so it was an alumni game, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
his son was friends with one of my friends that I was down there with, and so I found out who he was, or I met him. He was like, yeah, my my Land Rover is my tailgate car. That's the one that people could beat up. And I was like, what? That don't make no sense. And so then I was like, he was like, yeah, I'm in Portland too. I was like, what? I was like, and it looks like you don't play no sports. So I need to figure out what you're doing because you black and you doing
Yeah,
stuff. And so we just started
yeah.
connecting, and then we ended up. I got him to go to a play with me, and that's when we met Andrew. And we were just like, hey, we're trying to find black people because it's just us, and we're just meeting up every week. He was like, oh,
Yeah.
I know where black people are at. And that's really what started it off for us, you
Andrew
know.
does. Andrew's from here. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just like, you know, like it took us going to a play, like a play out of all places to find, our source of black people. And I
Yeah.
always like get a kick out of that because only in Portland would that happen.
And that's the hard thing. That's the hard thing about Portland is it's like you either know where to go or you don't know where to go. Because every time I'm like in the streets and I see black folks, and like you could tell, when you're walking in the street and they're looking at you and it's just like they look at you like they haven't seen black folks. And so that usually to me is like what's up? Where are you from?
Yeah.
And they're just like, where are the black people? And it's just like, we're here. We're right here. And they're like, this is it. And I'm like, no, this is not it. But we're, you know what I mean? We're in pockets. And unfortunately with gentrification, a lot of folks have just been pushed out to the east.
Yeah.
And we're dispersed. We're in little pockets. We're out. You got a whole bunch of black folks like that work for Nike and Intel, and they're sprinkled all over Beaverton, Hillsborough. So it's just like we're out here, but it's just like finding an event, and that's been really hard because I think a lot of black clubs and like you know what I mean, establishments where black folks have gathered. You know what I mean, the police haven't been kind, and those establishments don't stay open very long. So we have, you know what I mean, restaurants and establishments that black folks own, and so we can only like congregate and figure out, you know what I mean, just like you said, it's just like we're congregating in people's homes, and when we have an event, we'll all show up if we can.
Yeah. And so it kind of just becomes a testament to sort of just building a community and really just being consistent. Like, I mean, you're essentially, you know, and it's an extension of your family at some point.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just one of those things, you know, being black in Portland comes with its positives, but it requires a little bit of work and a little bit of, thinking outside of the box.
Because I know I was like really explicit because at some point I moved out to like Beaverton with my family, and that was really, really tough, especially like in my adolescence. That was super, super tough because we had moved down here from Seattle, which is extremely diverse, or at least the time that I was living there was really diverse. But living out there, I think I was definitely pretty explicit about like trying to build community once I was done with school. And so I think while I was going to PSU, I was taking particular classes, but I think Roberta Hunt, which was a professor of mine in Women of Color Studies at PSU, and her and I think I want to say another student had told me about Portland African American Leadership Forum, and I was applied for the leadership program, and so through that I was able to, like a great sense of community, meeting other black folks that wanted to be in leadership positions, or just, you know what I mean, wanted to learn skills and in order to progress professionally or in their community. It's cool to be around a lot of black folks that are just like-minded and want that community. And I'm close with everybody that I went through that leadership program with, and I sit as a vice chair for PALF, which we are, I think we just changed to Imagine Black.
Okay.
So, just to be really intentional. But I would say definitely a lot of my connections and a lot of community has come out of that. And search for folks.
And so what is now that you're kind of like taking a break and like things are kind of like slowing down and stuff, like what is are you still trying to like pursue medicine, or have you kind of just like shifted gears a little bit, or like what's that journey still like?
Jesus, I shift all the gears just now. So I'm finishing a software engineering program.
Okay.
And I finish up in the next 2 months. That's been great. I'm just in the process of building a portfolio. engineering has always been a passion of mine in the back of my head. And I think right now, just because I've been overwhelmed with in the, just being in the field where you're the helping profession is just it sucks your soul.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get my soul back, and not in a way that it's just I want to isolate myself from people, but I think it would do me a great deal, just to, and put my mind into something that I'm not necessarily dealing with, a particular patient population that comes with a lot of trauma. And so definitely software engineering is a total, yeah.
It's a total
180 from,
complete 180.
yeah,
Yeah.
complete 180 from what I was doing. But it's something that I enjoyed as a kid, and I've never been afraid. And fortunately for my father, he's just making the jump to something else. And I think as a lot of, are we millennials? Are we Gen X?
Yeah, we're millennials. Yeah, we're millennials.
Millennials, we're just accustomed to just having different hustles and trying stuff. So, yeah, I'm just making that jump, and it's something that I've, MySpace days where
Yeah.
I was trying to make my page look super cool.
Oh
and
yeah, you try to do the friends hack where you got 100 friends on your thing.
Oh yeah, I had learned Photoshop and I think Adobe and some other stuff, just trying to make my page look cool. And it's just I think the motivation to look cool in front of my peers and just have a cool page, I think served me in terms of a lot of skill sets that I came into the program with. But yeah, it's been fun. I'm enjoying it. I've jumped into some real estate investment with my sister, and she's created her own company, Masters Equity Partners.
Okay.
And she's totally into going into particular neighborhoods. She's in the Chicago market, and she's looking to get into the Detroit market and do some turnkey investment stuff. And she's always looking for clients. She's doing really, really well. So I'm backing her on that, and got my hand in a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So it seems like you're going into this sort of, you shifted to more of this sort of serial entrepreneurship venture that
Yeah.
that I tend to like. I mean, I've always tried to stay away from the freelance space because that's where all my experiences are. And I feel like
Yeah.
as I get deeper and deeper into it, I'll become unhireable even more. But
Yeah.
but that's where the opportunities are at, you know?
For sure. And there's after a while, you see that you can create opportunity. I know when I was at Niche, I was pretty explicit with my supervisor, and I was just while I'm serving patients, I also want to help with organizational development and fundraising for you guys' program, because you guys have, your outcomes are amazing. You guys have the evidence. There's no reason that you guys shouldn't be bringing in more money for the families. And so a lot of the skill sets that I obtained while I was putting together Spare Change, and I was able to bring over to this organization. And I was really impressed within the short time she brought me on to the leadership team, and I got to do a lot of organizational development and fundraising, and I feel definitely satisfied with how I've contributed to the transformation of that organization. So it's just I hope that I could go to organizations and bounce around to different organizations, whether it be my own or others, and leave it a little better than when I first got there.
Oh yeah, so. Definitely. And so what with the whole, with the sophomore development phase, what language are you learning essentially?
So I did a little bit of vanilla JavaScript, which I think has been really helpful as I progressed into JavaScript. We're working with right now like a React framework, Node.js. So it's pretty much full stack. It's just
Okay.
I'm learning the front end and the back end, and of course we're getting into databases and
Yeah.
things of that nature. So I feel like
Like
pretty
PHP
well rounded.
and maybe a little bit
Yeah.
of Firebase. Uh, that's so I I would look in I would look into the AR and VR space. I think
You know what? A lot of folks are telling me that.
being in
A
the
lot of
AR
folks are
space,
telling me
it's
that.
really, really nice.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I get to, I mean, I'm making augmented reality books right now. And so I still get that. I
Wow.
still get to like use the Photoshop stuff. I still get to use all the animation stuff. And
Yeah.
I suck at C sharp. And so,
Mhm.
that's like that's the dread that I have.
Yeah.
But in terms of building an app with AR, so you at the end of it you also get that sort of that ability to go out into the community and interact with people
Yeah.
with that stuff. So like for me, it's been very rewarding because
Mhm.
I have there's that community element that I could inject into it
Yeah.
that comes full circle for me.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, you were the second person. I want to say Jay. I talked to Jay too long ago, and of course, he's talking about
Yeah, Dr.
AR and
J.
VR. So,
Dr. J can do, you know,
Dr. J. Yeah, and I think that's what I like about our group is just I think we're all more than one thing, and just keeping in mind that we're not nouns, that we're verbs, and so we're consistently changing, and we can move into whatever space. And I think we have a multitude of skill sets, and so just I think in the past, I think our parents and a lot of us just had the luxury of like staying at a company for 30 years, and like that's
yeah,
not our reality. But I think it's our benefit because I think you get a lot more out of life, like changing, sucking at something for a little while, and you know what I mean, progressing. I think there's a lot of just like benefits to that over time, and yeah, it makes you versatile, and you can switch, you can adapt, you can change really quickly. And I think that's what we're supposed to do.
yeah. It's I find that it's like my both my parents are at this point where they've been at their jobs for what like 30 plus years, and they're about to
Mhm.
retire, and now they're looking for like, okay, what their second career is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you just did a job for 30 years, you looking for like what your next job is going to be? Like
Yeah.
I can't, it's like for me to like wrap my mind around that like they have to look for like the next sort of like career path after
Mhm.
investing so much time. That's just, I mean, it doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah. And hats off to the people that like that, you know what I mean, want to put in all that time. I don't. I'm a little ADHD, so
Yeah.
I'm like all over the place, and I want to try stuff, and I think it's the learning curve of just like starting at something that you were just terrible at. And while I think it's hard for a lot of people, especially like as you age, to be comfortable with like failing at something, I think once it's one of those things, and I think definitely like a trait that you see in a lot of entrepreneurs, but it's just like you are okay with failing and sucking at something for a little bit, but after, you know what I mean, after trying so many times, you're going to get it right
Yeah.
one way or another.
Yeah, and then when you
But
do,
I
then
think,
it's just like it just opens up more opportunities.
yeah, but you feel like you're like walking on air when you do figure it out. You know what I mean? It's just the I'm not gonna lie, the fails those can be tough,
Oh my
and like as
gosh.
far as like the you know what I mean, what that can do to your ego and your self esteem. But like when you're up, you're up. When you're down, you're down.
Especially in like software development too, because like
Yeah.
I'm over here like trying to add a button for like a screenshot function. That mess is taking me
Yeah.
like that mess is taking me like 2 3 weeks to do. And once I get it, I get that huge like dopamine high. But all I'm trying to do is just take a
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
So it's
Button functions are not to be played with. I
oh
had some qualms with the button function.
oh my gosh. And the worst part is when you finally get it going on an Android device, and then you have to go to an iOS device and you have to port
Oh
over everything,
gosh.
and then it's
Yeah.
it just stuff just you just kind of you just take it for what it is. It's like this is first world
Yeah.
problems. I'm not worrying about anything but how to take a
Yeah.
picture right now.
Yeah. But I'm hoping, like, I think with what I'm currently doing, that, like, it sounds like a lot of my friends and very much you is just like, you know what I mean? Like, you want to jump into the space, but it's just a matter of like having somebody that has those skill sets to be able to like bring ideas to fruition or just
Yeah,
bring them to
yeah.
the community
Uh,
in terms of just like an app or a website or
you know,
whatever have you.
it's yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to that sort of like imposter syndrome thing, where
Hmm.
for me, I I tend to go against the grain a lot because I'm pursuing medicine. I'm like one of maybe one black person there. I'm in the animation space and there aren't a lot of black people there. I came from
Hmm.
football, which had a whole bunch of black
Hmm.
people, but like within that, it was also isolated because I was in grad school, and so
Yeah.
it just by default I've tended to you know shy into stuff without feeling included, and
Yeah.
but it also comes with a particular feeling of like like I always expect to do things alone and I don't like doing things alone, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, of course, nobody likes to do things alone. I think it's, and it's, but if you're going to do things that you're going to find joy and happiness, it's just, unfortunately, it's like one of those things that you do have to go alone.
Yeah, and then eventually you'll get to the point where you can bring people with you and then you're no longer alone.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, like, I think the people that are meant to be in that space with you will naturally come along. But I, I share, you know what I mean, in terms of just a lot of experiences trying to drag people with me that say they wanted to come, but like you could just tell in their actions were really not about that life.
Yeah, yeah. They
And like
they like the
the
sound of it, but they
pain
don't
in
like
that,
the feeling of it.
or the work, or just like you just externally they're agreeing with you, but internally they're not with it.
Yeah,
And so like I've gone through my fair share of like just trying to bring folks along that in their hearts just weren't about it. And I think I've learned over time that go alone, one, you'll go faster, but two, the people that are supposed to join you, you'll meet along the way.
yeah, yeah. That's
And
very
whether
true.
that's temporarily and whether that's permanently, it's just the nature of the game.
Yeah, like you can't control it, but you just have to have faith that there's going to be a silver light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. To wrap up, if there are any apps that we should know about coming out in the future, anything that you're working on that we should all know about, feel free to drop it. And
To holler at you. Yeah, I haven't. I was really proud of a project that I did, and it's social justice, or kind of like just for or economic mobility app, and a way to simulate that. And I think kind of like in letting your own story unfold type way. Uh, I've been working on that app, and that's pretty exciting. I would like to get some real data in there, but hopefully I can push that out pretty soon. But I have a whole bunch of stuff in the works. This is not like
Yeah.
naturally. This is just like one of many things, but I think that's something that I'm an app that I'm really, really proud of, that I was able to complete. But it's just like completing the API for that and just getting the data in. But yeah, you have people, I'm sure, hopefully in the future you will be hearing a lot about me outside of Portland.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. It's just you just gotta keep grinding. That's just kind of the name of
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other than that, I would just plug my sister for Masters Equity Partners. She's doing her thing, and anybody that wants to go in investment and also kind of just like really learn about investing in real estate, and having somebody there that really genuinely cares to walk people through the process. Like, definitely reach out to her, and I'm 100% behind her in her business. So I'm definitely an investor myself. So
Okay. Okay.
to plug her on that.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. And so with that, I thank you for your time. Hopefully the symptoms and everything start to subside and you
Yeah.
know
We
like
make it through it.
yeah, it's hopefully this doesn't mess up the summertime. Like
Oh
that's just what
man.
I'm looking at right now. It's like summertime started. That's when summertime be popping too. And so,
Yeah.
you know, if we could get through this at least April, beginning of May, then you'll have like a week for people, or a month for people to just forget about it.
Yeah.
and then enjoy a good summer.
Yeah, absolutely. We're crossing our fingers.
Yep.
Social distance, y'all. Social distance.
Yep,
Stay home.
that's what it is right now. Pick up a book or play some video games or
Yeah.
something. Don't go outside.
Oh my God. Don't go outside. Or go outside, just stay away. Like, man,
Yeah,
don't spread the virus.
yeah.
But
I'm just looking back home, and people are still going to parties and stuff. I'm just like, no,
it sucks
no.
because a lot of people, I think, naturally were just like, I need a vacation, and this is like, this boo boo, this ain't it. This is not it.
Yeah, this is not it. This is not. And so,
uh,
yep. So stay safe. Try to, drink that vitamin C, get all the immunity
yeah.
boosts and everything, and then
Thank you. I appreciate it.
we will chat in the future.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Have a good one. Again, I want to give another shout out to the Soul District Business Association and Flossom Media for helping me put this on. I'm your host, Stephen Christian. I mixed and mastered this podcast. I also did all the interviews. And if you see any of the stuff on YouTube, I put all that stuff together as well. With all the social distancing things right now, I'm producing this right out of my home studio. So if you have a chance, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Medium at PDX Black Rose, which is PDX BLACKROSE. And if you're on Patreon, hit us up on there. We would love your support. If you don't do anything else, definitely rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. And on top of that, be sure to share this with your friends. The purpose of this podcast is to highlight the movers and shakers in Portland that are doing things in the Black community. And by supporting this podcast, you're supporting the community as a whole. So with that being said, thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the flip side. The intro song is brought to you by Andy Stokes. And the outro song is brought to you by Spring Gang from Epidemic Sound.